Hello, this is Mrs. Poland for Algebra 2, and in this video I'm going to go over some of the problems from the June 2022 region. We're going to start off with number 13. A parabola has a directrix of y equals 3 and a vertex of 2, 1. Which ordered pair is the focus of the parabola? And so we're going to start off by making an x and y axes. And we're going to create our directrix. So that's going to be a horizontal line that's going to pass through the y-intercept 0, 3. And the vertex is 2, 1. And we're going to label that V. So since the directrix is above the vertex, that means the parabola is going to be facing down. And P can be defined two ways. It can be looked at as half the distance between the focus and the directrix, but it can also be looked at as the distance from the vertex to the directrix or the vertex to the focus. So in this case, we're going to use that second definition. So we see that P, in this case, that distance is 2 units. So that means from the vertex, we're going to go 2 spaces down, 1, 2, and there's our focus. What is the coordinates of our focus? It's going to be the same x coordinate, so it's going to be 2, and the y coordinate would be -1, and so that's choice 1. We're going to skip number 4. It's a normal CDF problem, and I think you're fairly good at those. We're going to do number 15. Which statement below about the graph of f of x equals negative log x plus 4 plus 2 is true? So you can do this a number of different ways, but we'll try with the graphing calculator, though it's not the only way of doing it. So n, negative control log, in this case it's base 10, so you can either put the 10 in or not put the 10 in. That's purely at your discretion. We enter the argument of x plus 4, get out of the argument area, and plus 2. So first of all, the y-intercept of this function is between 0 and 2, okay? So for f of x, okay? So f of x definitely does not have a y-intercept of 0, 2. Before we change the other function, let's look at choice 3 and choice 4. As you go to the right, is your function going up, right? Because f of x is our y, are we going up? So if we look at our calculator, it's just the opposite. As you go to the right, you're going down. So that's not true. And choice 4 says, as you go to -4, what happens to your y values? So as you go left, and the closest you can go is -4, which makes sense because if you take that argument and set it equal to 0, now you have the equation of our asymptote, that wall, it's a vertical line. And so at x equals -4, so we can actually see it here. I can't write on this graph. So as you go to the right, you are going up. So it looks like this is our answer because this does look true, but it's always a good idea to double check. So if I'm negating f of x, I'm flipping it over the x-axis, and I'm really just changing, if I'm negating f of x, we could just put a negative sign and distribute it to both terms. Let me show you what it means before I cause confusion. So I'm distributing to both terms, and that would give you log of x plus 4. It does not, the negative sign does not distribute into the argument area minus 2. So that would be the new function. So we can modify our equation that we graphed. Whoop, that was not good. Let's hit escape. So let's hit tab. Let's go up. Let me approach it a different way before we all get frustrated. So I'm going to just delete that one, and then I'm going to negate that 2. And so we see that now that's reflected over the x-axis, we see that the y-intercept is actually closer to 0, -2, but it's not even -2. Okay, so I think that just confirms that our answer to this one is 4. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is number 18. I'm not going to do all the problems. I'm just going to do some of them, the ones that are a little trickier. Okay, so number 18, there are actually 2 ways to do this problem. One way is you could do long division. You can't factor the top or bottom, so method 1 is just good old-fashioned long division. So x squared plus 3 is our divisor. And remember, you have to have a placeholder, 0x plus 12. And so x squared divided by x squared is 1. And we would multiply it out and get x squared plus 3. So you have to move that 3 over so it's lined up with the other constant. Change the sign. And so our answer is 1 plus the remainder of 9 over the divisor. So we can see that choice 2 does work. But there's another way we can do this. So the second way we can do this is method 2. We could be smart about it. Instead of writing x plus squared plus 12, couldn't I write this as the numerator as x squared plus 3 plus 9? Because 3 plus 9 is 12. I know you're saying, what is she doing? Just give me a second. Hold your horses. Okay? So I rewrote the denominator, and notice I can actually separate my numerator out. I can write this numerator as x squared plus 3 over x squared plus 3 and take my 9 and give it its own denominator of x squared plus 3. X squared plus 3 divided by x plus squared plus 3 is 1 plus 9 over x squared plus 3. So that's just an alternative way of getting your answer. Number 19, an angle theta is rotated counterclockwise. So counterclockwise is this way. That's typically how we rotate something. On a unit circle, that means the radius of the circle is 1 with its terminal side in quadrant 2, as shown in the diagram below. Which of the following represents the radian measure of the angle? So there are a couple of ways of doing this. One way of doing this is to convert each angle into degrees first and see if the angles in degrees lie in 2. So 1 radian, well, let's just recall, to convert from radians to degrees, and it's even on the formula sheet, you would multiply by 180 degrees over pi. So I could go ahead and go 1 times 180 over pi, and that this is for choice 1. And let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to go to a regular calculator page, and I'm going to do 180 divided by, and the pi button is to the left of the H, and we see it's 57.3 degrees. Well, we know that can't be the answer because that's in quadrant 1. So that angle is in quadrant 1. So that doesn't work. And so then we try 2 degrees. So 2, we want to convert to, 2 radians. We want to convert it to degrees so we get a sense of where it's located. So you can go 2 times 180 divided by pi. Let's and we get 114.6. Well, that's looking good. So 114.6 is definitely located in 2, so that's looking pretty. But let's go ahead and look at the other choices. 65.4 times 180 over pi, because again, these measurements are for angles and radians. So that was 65.4 times 180 divided by pi. Okay, and that is a huge amount. And that's rotating many, many, many degrees. So you would have to keep on subtracting 360 to see where that angle is located. And I can keep on going, but I can tell you that it doesn't land in quadrant 2. And 114.6, they try to trick you. This is 2 radians converted into degrees. So we're not going to even bother looking at that. So the answer is choice 2. The other way you could have done this problem is by using, and this is from way back when we went over Unit 7, SOAR, S is equal to theta times R. S is the intercepted arc, which in this case is 2. Theta is what we want to find, the angle in terms of the degrees, and the radius is 1 because it's a unit circle, so theta is equal to 2. That's the most straightforward way and the way I initially did the problem. However, you would need to remember the formula SOAR and recognize that the 2 was an intercepted arc. Number 20. So number 20, you're given this trig function and you want to find out which statement is false. And again, all of these problems could be done in multiple ways, but I'm going to show you this in using the graphing calculator. So what you're going to do is you're going to start a new document. Don't save what you have and go into your graph. And what you want to do is make sure your settings in your graph are such that both the angle and the geometry angle are in terms of radians, and make it as a default. I have yet to see a problem on this regents where it's in degrees, where you need it in degrees. You never know, but I doubt it. So let's hit tab and let's go ahead and type in the function shown on your paper. So 5, and then it's the sine function, and it's pi over 6. And you just have to be very careful when you enter this. Hopefully my computer will, it's not my computer, my internet will behave. So pi over 6, and get out of the fraction, but stays in the parentheses, And instead of a t, because the calculator does not work with the t, the CX calculator, you can enter x minus 5 in parentheses, get out of the other parentheses, and plus 7. Now, the reason why you're not seeing the whole graph is you have to change your window. Now, the problem, if you go back to it, says the hours after midnight. The other thing is you want to set your Y min and Y max. So to get the minimum value of the function, remember the minimum value of the trig function is the negative of the amplitude plus the vertical shift. So the amplitude is 5 and the vertical shift is 7. So it's -7 plus 5, which is 2. And the maximum value of this graph is the amplitude plus the vertical shift. That's 7 plus 5, or 12. So right away, I know that the maximum value is 12, which means that choice 2 is correct, so it can't be our answer. Okay. But this is going to help us set up our window anyhow, which is why even though I wasn't looking to go through the choices now, why I went to eliminate choice 2. So even though our minimum value is 2, I would make my window, my Y min 0, and my Y max go a little higher, 14. My X min, I would do 0 because that's 0 hours after midnight would be like the starting point. And I may have to change X max, but I'm going to make it 24. And so I'm going to go into my calculator, into menu, into window settings. I'm going to change X min to 0 and X max to 24. You could have done 12. And I'm going to change my Y min to 0 and my Y max to something slightly higher, because I like to normally see have a cushion area. And again, you could have done other windows. This was just what I chose to do so I can get a good look at the graph. Okay. So how does this help? Now I see my graph, and let's go back to the problem. So part A says a low tide occurred at 2 a.m. So really what they're saying is, did I get that minimum value? And our minimum value is 2 when t is equal to 2. So there are a couple of ways of doing it. You could go by Control T and see that at 2, it's 2. And then, so that's definitely a true statement. So therefore, that's not our answer. And they also said in choice 3, the water depth at 9 a.m. was approximately 11. So we can continue looking at that table and just scrolling down. And at 9, that's approximately 11. So that's also a true statement. The other thing you could do is if you hit Control T to get out of the table, if I had just did menu trace, graph chase, and I typed in 2, it would have shown me 2, 2. And if I had typed in 9, it would have shown me 9, 11.3. But that's really preference, whatever you want. So it's choice 4, but let's just confirm. The difference in the water depth between high tide and low tide is 14. Well, high tide, we know that the depth was 12, and low tide we knew is 2. So we actually got a difference of 10 where the statement says 14. So that's a full statement, which means that's our answer. Okay, problem number 21. A function is defined, and this is a recursive formula. I know it's recursive because I see a prior term in here, where a sub 1 is 8. And now they want you to find a sub 3. So you have to actually go choice through choice, but thankfully it's only 3 of them. So you start off with a sub 1 is 8. Now n is 2. So that means you're looking for a sub 2, which is a sub 2 minus 1 is a sub 1 plus log of 2 plus 1 is 3, and 2 minus 1 is 3 minus 1. So let's plug that in. So a sub 1 is 8 plus log base, actually, this is 2. Almost made a mistake here. So that's log base 3 of 1. Now I know log of 1 is just 0, but I'm going to just show you how we could just do this. If you didn't know that, so that's going to be 8 plus control log, hit base 3, and then you're going to type in, let me, I lost my place, of 1. And I got 8 for a sub 2. And now I want to do n equals 3, so I get a sub 3. So that would be a sub 2 plus log. Remember, n is 3, so that's log of 3 plus 1 or 4, and 3 minus 1. A sub 2 is 8 plus log of 4 of 2. So let's enter that in your calculator. So that's 8 plus control log 4. Go out of this 2, and you get 8.5. Okay, let's just do a couple more. Which of the functions has a maximum value of y of value of 4 and a midline of 3? So here's an absolute value function, and we see that the maximum value is 4, but it doesn't have a midline because this is going forever down. So there's no middle of this graph, so it can't be choice 1. Likewise, this has a maximum, doesn't have a maximum value, goes to infinity, but because it's a continuous function and continually goes to infinity, there's no middle of that graph. So it doesn't have a max and no midline. And this has no midline. Okay. Here, to get the maximum value of a graph, it's the amplitude plus the vertical shift. So the amplitude is always the absolute value. And so in this case, it's 3, and the vertical shift is 1. So this becomes 3 plus 1 is equal to 4. So that has a maximum value of 4. And the vertical shift and the midline are the same. So its midline is y equals 1. So this is your answer, choice 2, but just to see why the other one doesn't work. So this has an amplitude of 4 and a vertical shift of 1. So it definitely has a midline of y equals 1, but its maximum value is 4 plus 1 or 5. So that's why that doesn't work. And choice 2, we just confirmed, is the answer. Number 23, they want you to simplify this, this expression. And so you actually have to multiply it out. So x times x squared is x cubed. X times negative xyi is negative x squared yi. X times negative y squared is negative x y squared. And now we're going to distribute the yi to both terms. So I just did this, and now I'm going to do this. So then it's yi times x squared is positive x squared yi. yi times negative xyi is negative x y squared I squared. You just have to be patient. Yi times negative y squared is negative y squared yi. So let's see what we can do to simplify. X squared yi and negative x squared yi and x squared yi cancels. And so far I have x cubed minus xy squared. I squared is negative 1. You are multiplying. Some of you were subtracting on another problem involving i's. You're multiplying. So negative 1 times negative xy, negative xy squared is positive xy squared. And now this is negative y squared times y. I is negative y cubed I. So these two terms cancel, and I'm left with x cubed minus y cubed I, which is choice 4. Okay. Number 24. You're given a function where t represents time in years, and you want to find an equivalent function where you can look at the monthly rate as opposed to the yearly rate. So what you do is you convert years into months by multiplying the exponent by 12. But if I'm changing the exponent, then I have to change my base. I have to raise it. So instead of being an annual rate, I need a monthly rate. So I'm taking 1.03 and raising it to the 112. And when I do that, I get 1.00247 raised to the 12t. And so that is choice 1. I hope this video is helpful.